Arata was a miserable virgin who gets zero hoes despite being the heir of an ultra-wealthy family. However, everything changes when he learns that he was adopted, so he decides to rizz up his step-sisters and crack them. This story starts with Arata begging his younger brother Shion to teach him some game because he is still a miserable virgin, while Shion is already cracking a baddie at school. Shion then reminds him that he can get any girl he wants with his status as the family heir, but Arata starts yapping about finding true love. Later, he tries to see his crush, despite being scared to confess his feelings. However, after seeing that she already has a boyfriend, his heart shatters. Days later, it's his sister's birthday, so Arata gets dressed for the celebratory dinner. At the table, he sees Banri, the oldest and hottest of all his sisters, Oka, the final boss of Crash Out's, Minami, their family's version of Serena Williams, Seiha, the designated nerd, and Kotano, the shy and innocent sister they are celebrating. Just then, their dad Kaname shows up, so after they all toast to Kotono, their dad suddenly drops the bombshell that they are all adopted, except Minami and Shion, who are real twins. Naturally, they all get confused, so Arata asks for an explanation, and their dad says he promised their mother to keep the truth hidden until the right time. He then resumes the dinner like nothing had happened, but they are all frozen like a deer at a headlight. After dinner, they all admit to feeling betrayed, but also understand that their dad had to keep his promise to their mum. They then ask Banri if she knew, since she is the oldest, but Banri can barely recall anything from their early years. However, she says that the sudden revelation shouldn't change their bond as siblings, and after taking a moment to think, they agree with her and head back inside. Several minutes later, Arata is in his room, still overthinking everything, so he decides to take a bath. Once there, he sees all his sister's laundry and considers taking a sniff. After controlling himself, he enters the bathroom and is shocked to see Kotono. After she also gets embarrassed seeing his pickle, he apologizes and quickly grabs the towel to run off, but she asks him to wash her back as he used to when they were young. While he starts scrubbing and fighting intrusive thoughts, Shion meets Oka, who then admits that she is worried about how Arata is taking this sudden revelation. Shion then tells her not to worry because Arata won't stop seeing them as his sisters. However, in the bath, Kotono has just hugged Arata, causing him to panic because bathroom incidents usually end in unholy activity. While Arata is fighting his freaky demons, Shion tells Oka that they could even marry each other since they are not actually related. She gets disgusted by this and claims she would rather screw a cactus than him or Arata. However, Oka still knows that their relationship as siblings has changed forever, so she asks Shion what really happened between Arata and Kotono. He tells her that some weeks ago, Kotano suddenly confessed her feelings to Arata in the game room. As expected, he tried to leave, thinking she was tweaking for liking her brother, but she wouldn't let him leave without a response. That was when they all entered the game room and thought he was trying to rizz her up because of the suspicious position. Oka gets worried because learning that they are not related might make Kotono even more obsessed with Arata. At the same time, Arata is barely holding on to his sanity because Kotono has refused to let go. She even confesses her feelings to him again, but this time, he tells her that nothing can happen between them. When she refuses to give up on her feelings, Arata promises to look out for her because she clearly has some freaky brain defect. After also deciding to keep what just happened to himself, he leaves while she stays in the bath, feeling defeated. While Banri enters their dad's office to talk about everything, Arata returns to his room and finds Seiha, who then asks where he was. He quickly says he went on a walk, but she knows when he is lying. However, she starts talking about random stuff they did over the years, which confuses him because she never shows up just to talk about irrelevant stuff. The next moment, Seiha leans into him and carefully watches for a reaction while he desperately tries to stop little Johnny from waking up. After she pulls away and commends him for not getting charged up, he asks why she did that in the first place. Seiha then admits that she was in the bath when Kotono hugged him, and although he rejected her love like he should, she still wanted to make sure he wasn't thinking of cracking his sisters. This was a test, and since he passed, she explains that Kotono probably gained the courage to try again after what their dad said. She once again commends him for not giving in to temptation, but Arata is starting to wonder why the plot gods keep testing him. After leaving his room, Seiha takes a moment to check if her heart is still pounding, and when Minami asks what she is up to, she claims it was nothing and leaves. The next morning, Arata is still worried about everything, but he quickly gets ready for school. On the way out, he sees Banri and Kotono, dressed nurses who like chocolate bananas. Banri then asks for his opinion, but he gets creeped out, so she apologizes and tries to strip Kotono in front of him. Minutes later, they all head out, and Shion tells Arata not to think much of it because Banri was probably trying to lighten the mood. Along the way, they both hear some schoolboys talking about how beautiful the girls are, so Shion wonders what will happen when the truth about their family becomes public information. As they both get a little worried again, Arata takes a good look at the girls and realizes that they are good at putting on an act because they all look like nothing has changed. Several hours later, Arata is at his locker packing up when he sees Minami, who then says that her coach gave her the day off so she can study and get her grades up. This makes Arata realize that she only uses her brain on the court, so he offers to tutor her. Minutes later, they are at a restaurant, and as Arata makes every effort to teach her, Minami keeps finding new ways to distract herself. This makes Arata sure that they are not related because no one in his bloodline should be this dumb. Eventually, he decides to call it a day, but on the way out, Arata sees his crush with her new boyfriend, so he hides, and Minami notices. Moments later, while walking, Minami starts yapping about what their dad said, which makes Arata a little worried. However, when she admits to being worried about how Kotono and the others are taking the sudden revelation, he regains some faith in her. The next moment, she tells him to cheer up because his crush having a boyfriend is not the end of the world. Arata immediately gets embarrassed and asks how she knew, so Minami explains how Oka blabbed about his miserable love life. Later that night, Minami gives Oka a cake set she has always wanted, along with the AirPods she lost. Oka then thanks her for being accountable and decides to let her keep the AirPods. Days later, Arata cleans up for school and runs into Kotono, who manages to greet him without gushing like a water fountain. After she leaves, Arata starts to think she might be done with her feelings of love, but then Seiya startles him. She reminds him to call her sweet names, but Arata skips all that to assure her that nothing weird is going on with Kotono, because she obviously saw them greet each other. After Seiya agrees, Minami suddenly pops up and starts yapping like she started her morning with a splash of nose candy. Much later, at school, Arata spots his crush and avoids her again. The next moment, Aka whispers "I love you" into his ear, and he panics, thinking Kotono's love fever is spreading. However, Aka says he should try saying those words to his crush because he might just get lucky. Naturally, the spineless virgin refuses and reminds Oka that she has a boyfriend, but Oka still tells him to put on his big boy pants instead of creepily watching her. The next moment, Aka's friends call her, so she leaves Arata to meet up with them. As she starts discussing weekend plans with the girls, Arata realizes that they treat her like a celebrity. He then wonders how they would react if he ever exposed Oka's true nature, but the fear of how Oka would react makes him scrap the idea totally. When one of the girls takes a peek and says that Arata is pretty hot for a guy, another girl jokes about asking him out. Aka then starts listing out reasons why he would be a horrible boyfriend, but her face turns red, and they all notice, so she changes the topic and leaves for class. Days later, the siblings arrive at the park for Kotono's birthday celebration. Banri then asks them to act civilized for once so Kotono can enjoy her day. The next moment, a mascot shows up, so Minami and Aka chase after it. Banri and Arata then decide to get food for everyone and ask them not to run off. Just a few minutes later, they return and find absolutely no one there, so Arata tries to call Shion, but he gets no response. Banri then suggests going on a date, but he refuses for obvious reasons and reminds her that today was meant for Kotono. After assuring him that they will eventually run into the others, Banri drags him along, but Arata can only think about the fact that her melons are pressing up against his arms. Banri eventually notices and asks if he likes it, but Arata panics and tries to play it off. As she continues teasing him, he pulls away from her and realizes that every other guy in the park has been staring at her milkers. Clueless, Banri then promises to let him grab it later on, but Arata acts like he is not dying for a taste. Minutes later, while climbing a flight of stairs, he spots her glistening thighs and keeps staring until he trips. Thankfully, Banri doesn't notice because she wants to go on a ride with him. This time, Arata can't escape, so he puts on his big boy pants and suffers through the terrifying rides while desperately trying to reach Shion and the others. Minutes later, he finally reaches them, so Shion tells the others where Arata and Banri are so they can meet up. As they start talking about how Banri is probably taking this opportunity to get freaky with Arata, Oka notices that Kotono feels insecure, so she starts talking about something else. Meanwhile, Arata just told Banri that they can finally meet up with everyone else, but she decides to wait until she is done getting snacks. He then asks how she feels about what their dad said the other night, and Banri finally admits that she has been troubled this entire time. At first, Arata considers telling her about Kotono and Seiya, but he ultimately decides to keep it to himself. He then claims that he is just worried about their relationship as siblings. After Banri rubs his head and tells him not to worry, Arata remembers that she has always acted like a deputy parent for everyone. Just then, a girl spills her drink, so Arata jumps in to protect Banri before saying that he will also help her protect the rest of their siblings. Moments later, Shion and the girls finally return, but they get worried about Arata because he is still soaked. With the gang finally reunited, Minami suggests going on another ride together, but Arata is already tired of having his insides flipped. That is, until Banri grabs him with her melons again, giving him no choice but to agree. Much later, after they are finally done with the rides, Arata, Shion, and Kotono leave to empty their bladders. Seiya then tells the rest of them about Kotono's confession, but they think she is joking. However, after she explains what happened in the bathroom the other night, they get concerned, because Kotono has obviously watched too much corn. As they all start accusing Arata of deceiving Kotono with his meat stick, Seiha explains how Arata is actually the one in danger, because Kotono literally held him captive in a position most Gunners won't be able to resist. After she assures them that Arata is not the problem, Oka asks who she can be so sure, so Seiha tells them how she sat on Arata's glizzy just to see how he would react. While Banri gets impressed by her bravery, Aka wonders how she got adopted into a family of depraved lunatics. Banri then tells them not to think much of when Kotono did, because she is probably going through a phase, as they all did. Minami agrees, so Seiha suggests keeping everything secret so Kotono won't feel nervous around them. However, after Aka tells them about the first incident in the gaming room, they all get concerned and think Kotono might actually have feelings for Arata. While Banri insists that Kotono is just going through a phase, the others get concerned, so Banri brings up the conversation she had with their dad after the crazy dinner that changed everything. He basically explained that they are all orphans because their real parents are practically non-existent. They then argue that the sudden revelation is making Kotono a lot more confident about her feelings for Arata. Regardless, they decide to keep it all under wraps unless Kotono tries to ride Arata's pogo stick again. Moments later, Arata returns, so they all head to a merch store for one last shopping spree. While there, Arata sees someone who looks like his crush and panics, but then Oka shows up to distract him. As they both take a walk, Aka notes that they are not actually twins, like they initially thought, but Arata says it's irrelevant because he will always see her as his twin sister. Oka then reminds him of all the times they shared things and thought they had twin telepathy. As Arata wonders what all this corny chit-chat is going on, Oka suddenly admits that she loves him. Just the other day, at school, Shion asked Arata if he had ever found any of their sisters attractive, but Arata was immediately repulsed by the idea. He claimed he had never wanted to bring his Gunner fantasies to life, so Shion apologized for blabbing to Oka about the incident with Kotono. However, he also told Arata not to worry, because Oka was confident that he would never give his own sister backshots. Arata then said that suddenly learning the truth about their relationship won't change the fact that they are all siblings. At this, Shion reminds him that the rest of the world won't feel the same, so they have to keep it secret for now. Back in the present, Oka tells Arata how proud she feels to call him her twin brother. This makes him realize that she was just expressing her love as his sister for the first time, not trying to fight Kotono for a place in his heart. After she also commends him for not letting his intrusive thought win when Kotono tried to crack, Arata asks why she can't be this sweet all the time. The next moment, Aka flips out and verbally assaults him before heading to the ladies' room. The next day, in the family's training room, Arata tries to work on his abs in peace, but Minami shows up, which surprises him since she should be at practice by now. He gets a little excited to train with her, but she tells him to tone it down a notch because she just got up a little early. She also asks why he is so obsessed with working out when he literally has no talent or chance to become an athlete. After Arata explains that their dad basically turned him into a gym rat at a young age, Minami recalls when she started looking for Oka last night. She happened to find her just as she said "I love you" to Arata, but she left before Oka could explain that she meant it as a twin. As a result, Minami has been scrambling her brain, thinking of a way to ask Arata about it, which is why she is here in the first place. Arata eventually notices how weird she is acting, but when he asks why, she starts working out to distract him. Eventually though, Minami finally asks if something happened between him and Oka, but Arata is clueless, so Minami tells him to forget about it. After giving it some thought, he thinks this about their recent fights, so he apologizes to Minami if it's making her uncomfortable. However, Minami is still conflicted, so she thanks him for chatting with her and decides to head out. Several minutes later, Arata is still wondering what all that was about, but he decides to go take a shower, only to see Seiha changing right at the door. He immediately looks away to avoid a cream load in his pants and asks if she forgot what the door is for. When Seiha asks why he is acting like he hasn't seen all that before, Arata explains that it has never been this sudden before, so Seiha apologizes and heads into the shower. As Arata walks in to drop his towel, he spots Seiha's ring and asks if it fits because she usually wears it as a necklace. She then says it's still a bit loose, but since it's the most valuable item from their mum, she takes it off before a bath to protect it. Much later, Arata is in his room chilling when Banri shows up and starts glazing him for keeping the place clean. After he tells her to stop acting like it's her first time seeing it, she asks where he hides all his otaku content. As usual, Arata acts clueless, so she checks his browser history and learns that he is worse than the people on Epstein's list. After grabbing his laptop, Arata asks why she is really here, so Banri joins him on the bed and asks if he wants to go on a date with her. Much later, they are at a phone store, and while Banri reminds Arata that he recently wanted to get a better phone, he wonders what this has to do with her melons squeezing his arms. He eventually tells her to stop teasing him before a salesperson for the store shows him the latest phone, as if it's any different from all the other generations. Just like you, slow-brained Gunners, Arata accepts the lies that having a super expensive iPhone gives him aura, so the lady leaves to get everything set up. Banri then asks why he just accepted without taking time to decide on the color he wants. Arata says he doesn't really care about the phone's look, so long as it serves its purpose. At first, Banri commends him for having some active brain cells left, but she tells him not not to use the same mindset to pick a partner because it's better to date a toxic baddie with recoiling buns than a loyal chick with none. Right then, the sales lady returns and tells them that couples actually get a discount on new devices. As Arata tries to clear up the confusion, Banri grabs him to act like they are actually lovebirds. Moments later, they get the phone. But Arata is still wondering why Banri is putting up this act because she definitely doesn't need a discount, unlike you brokies watching this. Banri then decides to get ice cream, and while eating it, she suggests getting some for everyone else. However, Arata says there is no point in that since it will probably melt by the time they get home. This reminds Banri of the time Minami and Oka got into a fight about ice cream. She also recalls that Kotono liked to hide whenever the others were fighting, but Arata tells Banri not to make fun of Kotono because she always hid whenever they mentioned ghosts at home. The next moment, Banri says she only brought him out because she wants him to feel safe enough to tell her about anything. After Arata says he has nothing in particular to talk about, Banri takes a picture and sends it to the family group chat. Kotono sees the photo and considers sending a compliment to her hot older brother, but she changes her mind to avoid looking like a creep. Meanwhile, Arata and Banri have finished with their ice creams, so she suggests going somewhere else. However, after getting a sudden text, her mood flips and she decides to call it a day. Arata then tells her to get a real boyfriend so she won't make him tag along for her pointless cravings. Moments later, Minami calls Banri to thank her for checking if anything is going on between Arata and Aka. She then sends a text to Banri saying that she probably misunderstood what she saw as Oka asking him out. However, she accidentally sends it to the group chat, so she quickly deletes it right before Oka shows up. Meanwhile, Kotono's heart is skipping beats because she happened to see the text right before Minami deleted it. The following night, at dinner, Arata notices that Seiha is upset about something, which reminds him that she had a similar expression at the train station earlier. Much later, he is on his way inside when he sees her on the stairs with the same look on her face. This time, he finally asks if she needs to talk about something, but quickly takes it back so she won't think he is weird. Surprisingly, Seiha accepts the offer, but instead of talking, she asks if he wants to play Body Twister. Naturally, Arata gets confused because playing that game always ends in creamy pies, so he asks why she chose the freakiest game to play with him. Seiha then admits that she felt something special while sitting on his glizzy the other night. She has been unable to think straight ever since, so this game is the only way to see if it was a one-time thing or if she actually feels something for him. Arata gets even more surprised and tries to back away, but Seiha tells him to relax, like this is some regular activity. Moments later, they start playing, but Arata gets nervous and tries everything possible to keep his distance from her. Seiha notices this and reminds him that the whole point of the game is to get closer. Eventually, Arata realizes that he is just overreacting to what she said. He thinks there is no way a simple game can lead to ferocious backshots, so he decides to relax and gets closer. However, his relaxed state doesn't last long because Seiha spreads her beefy legs right in front of him. As he struggles to keep it together, it gets to his turn, and he now has to reach a block right next to Seiha's buns. He once again tries to play it cool and slowly moves his leg, but it still brushes up on her divine box. Unlike him, Seiha acts like nothing happened and starts boring him with the science of love. Then, she turns over to reach another block, but her cheeks end up right in Arata's face. Like that isn't enough, she drops it on him, but before the starved virgin can eat, she ends the game and claims that she has no feelings towards him. After thanking him for agreeing to the test, she leaves, but Arata stays back to gather his thoughts. Then, Uka shows up and asks what was happening because she could hear some sounds from outside. After Arata says it was nothing, she asks if he wants to play a game with her. He accepts and hopes she is not about to pull something even worse than Seiya. Thankfully, Oka just wants to show off her gamer girl skills and proceeds to smoke him for several minutes. Arata gets surprised by this and notes that she is a lot better than the talentless ogre he thought she was growing up. However, when the winning streak gets to Uka's head, Arata decides to put her in her place by totally wiping the floor with her character. Oka then says she has to use the ladies' room, but she grabs him from behind as punishment for the humiliating defeat. Arata tries to break free, but she keeps increasing her grip, so he flips her over and pins her down. However, this unholy position makes his heart beat faster, so he tries to play it off by saying that she caused this. Oka then admits that she never expected him to be this assertive. After calmly leaving the room, she takes a moment to get her intrusive thought under control because Arata just made her feel things she hasn't felt before. Minutes later, Arata also gets tired of overthinking, so he heads out, failing to realize that Kotono has been watching everything that happened from a closet. The next day, after school, their dad calls Arata to his office and asks how they are all handling the news that they are unrelated. Arata then says that nothing has really changed about the family dynamic, so their dad asks if he has fallen in love. Around the same time, the girls have just caught up with the latest episode of a romance series, so they start talking about what comes next for the characters. Meanwhile, Kotono is quiet again as she thinks of how to respond to everything she has seen over the last few days. Eventually, the girls get tired of all the chit-chat and decide to head inside, but Kotono stops them and admits to being in love with Arata. Banri quickly swoops in and says it's nice that she loves her brother, but Kotono knows what she is trying to do. She then tells all of them to stop treating her like a delusional little girl and insists that she even wants to marry Arata. She also claims to be ready to fight for his love if anyone else tries to take him. While the girls are processing this, Arata gets curious about their dad's sudden interest in his love life. Their dad then says he is just looking out. So Arata explains how unlucky he has been with the ladies, after their dad says that it usually takes some time to find the right one. Arata asks what made their mom the right one for him. Their dad immediately remembers that she had a massive wagon in the back, but he says it was all because of her personality. After their dad talks about a special room he plans to show them when the time is right, Arata tells him not to worry about him or the rest of his siblings because they will remain a family regardless of what happens. Days later, Arata is on his way out for a workout when he runs into Minami on her way out for training. As she makes up a reason to run off, he asks if she is okay because she started acting strangely after the other night. This makes Minami think he might already know about Kotono, so she plays it off, claims to be good, and runs off to avoid more questions. Moments later, Banri is trying to teach the dog some manners when Arata walks in and asks why she is already prepared. Banri then claims that she has something urgent to attend to in college, so Arata also tries to yell at the dog. While this ends horribly for him, Shion shows up, so Banri apologizes for not making him breakfast. After telling her not to worry, Shion then asks if they will have to dispose of Arata since the dog practically ate him for breakfast. Later on, at the school court, everyone watches in shock as Minami enters the zone and dominates all her opponents. This whole time, she has been thinking of Kotono's confession and wondering what's going to happen next. After the practice session, she tries to get some rest, but 3 girls run up to beg her for tips to improve their skills as well. She then makes up a bunch of gibberish to get them off her back before spotting a senior named Nao. Minami immediately challenges her to a friendly match, and Nao excitedly agrees to it. Minutes later, Nao has pushed herself to the absolute limit, but it's still not enough. She then meets up with Minami, who admits that she misses their games together. At this, Nao tells her to get used to it, because she graduates in a year. This means they won't play together until Minami goes pro. Nao then admits that she saw Minami as a spoiled trust fund brat when she first joined the team. The fact that she quickly rose through the ranks from her insane work ethic was what made it clear that Minami meant business. The next moment, Minami calls her a cornball for that goofy speech, so Nao challenges her to another game. Minami doesn't think much of this, but while playing later on, she hears the other girls saying that Nao didn't get any tennis scholarships, which means she won't be going pro. After recalling all the times Nao helped her get better, Minami decides to win the gold medal at all costs for her. Later that day, Arata gets back home and asks for Minami before finding her in the training room. His expression makes her nervous at first until he offers to train with her for her upcoming tournament. After Minami says it's nothing to get worried about, Arata asks why she is hiding her injury, but this surprises her. Turns out, the maid saw her wrapping it up earlier, so she told Arata. He then tells Minami to find someone she trusts to speak to, but he still wants to help her work out. Around the same time, Aka is thinking back to what happened with Kotono the other night. After she made the confession and left, they all tried to blame it on the romance movie they watched, but Seiha brought them back to reality. She assures them that Kotono was sure of her feelings, but Banri still suggested letting it slide so Kotono could get more time to think things through. As Oka keeps wondering what will happen next, Arata starts a stretch routine with Minami to see where it hurts. While doing so, he gets a good look at her plots and realizes that she is not just a little sister anymore. After snapping himself out of the freaky daydream, he tells her not to push too hard while playing because a major injury would hurt her career. Minutes later, Arata is on his way up when he bumps into Kotono. Seeing her nervous expression makes him think she feels weird about the hug in the bathroom, so he tells her to try wearing something warm to break the ice. However, as he turns to leave, she asks if he was just with Minami, and after he admits it, Kotono asks if anything weird happened with her. Arata panics, thinking she knows about the injury, so he asks what she means. However, Kotono gets embarrassed and tells him not to worry before running off. Several days later, it's time for Minami's tournament, so the team heads out for the games. Once there, Minami easily defeats every opponent she gets because she is obsessed with giving Nao the gold medal. After all the matches for the day, everyone celebrates her effort, including Nao. However, on the way back to the team bus, Minami suddenly winces in pain from her injury and Nao notices. Later that night, Arata gets a little worried and asks Minami if she can really play the finals in this state. After claiming that it's not a problem, she assures him that it will be properly treated. A week after this, Arata heads down for breakfast and asks Banri if she saw Minami leaving, since it's almost time for her tournament. After Banri says no, Seiya shows up, asking the same question because Minami's shoes are still at the door. As everyone else comes out saying that they can't find Minami anywhere, Arata realizes that she has gone missing. While he panics and starts thinking of a solution, everyone else joins him to brainstorm. The next moment, Minami walks in like nothing happened, leaving them all frozen in shock. As she starts heading inside, Arata asks why he hasn't left for the game, but Minami tells him not to worry about it because she won't be playing anymore. Another wave of shock spreads across the house, but as they keep staring staring. Minami claims it's no big deal and heads inside to eat. Minutes later, Arata walks in, still surprised that she is casually stuffing her face. He then asks if she is truly okay because she is way too calm for someone who just got kicked off the most important game of the year. Minami then explains how the coach decided to send her home after Nao told him about the injury. She once again tells Arata not to worry because she is actually okay with it, but Arata knows this is a lie. When he asks why she really wanted to play that match, Minami gets surprised, but she still insists that it's all okay, so Arata leaves to talk with Shion. Once there, Arata explains how Minami is acting unbothered about the game, and Shion immediately says it's an act. Earlier that morning, he got up and saw her crying in a corner because of the game. Shion further explains that Minami has always been the type to hide her pain just to make others feel better. The next moment, Arata rushes back to Minami's room and tells her to get ready for the game. Several minutes later, she comes out and is surprised to see that they all canceled their plans just to support her. With that, they all get into the car, and Banri begs them to act civilized because this is actually her first time behind the wheel. As everyone else tries to figure out the directions to help Banri, Minami gets nervous, thinking that her injury could actually stop her from playing. She also recalls how she reacted when Nao and the coach first said that she couldn't play. All of a sudden, Arata locks in and gives a dramatic speech to get her spirits up. He then warns her to stop playing the moment she feels any pain. Lastly, he tells her to stop acting strong all the time because they also want to help her. Minutes later, their high spirits die out because the game has already started, but they are still stuck in traffic. Like that isn't enough, Minami's team has already lost 2 games, which means they basically need some miracle to secure the gold. Minutes later, they're all still in the car, arguing over which way is best to get Minami to the game. Just then, they spot a bunch of rental bikes, and Seiha recalls that she has the app, so she activates it. Arata then takes Minami out of the car and picks up a bike so he can take her to the game by himself. While he desperately tries to get to the game, Nao helps the team secure their first win, but the rookie going up next is nothing close to Minami, which tells her that they are definitely losing the game. Just then, Minami runs inside, and as she struggles to catch her breath, Arata drops to his knees and begs the coach to let her play. He promises that she is fit to play and will stop the game if anything happens, but the coach is still skeptical. However, after Nao tells him to give her a chance, he takes a moment to think but ultimately agrees to let her play. Moments later, Minami is on the court about to play her match, but a sudden rush of fear makes her dizzy. She almost passes out, but after hearing Shion and everyone else cheering her up, she remembers all her training and decides to go all out. The moment the ref signals them, Minami channels all her focus into the game and slowly dominates every serve. After a grueling couple of minutes, she finally secures the win. Unfortunately, this isn't enough to cover all their losses, so their team loses. When they all gather together, Minami apologizes for not showing up earlier to help, all while faking a smile so they don't get worried about her. Just then, Nao starts walking over, so Minami prepares for a scolding or even a slap, but Nao just wants to thank her. She admits that their team would have never made it to the finals if not for Minami's efforts, so she shouldn't beat herself up over this loss. Nao further says she enjoyed all their training sessions, and this makes Minami emotional. Much later, Arata starts searching a nearby park to find Minami. When he eventually does, she immediately starts acting like losing the one game she spent months training for is no big deal. She then tells him about the talk with Nao and says it would have been better if they all admitted that she failed the team instead of acting like she actually did anything to help them. After seeing the worried look on Arata's face, Minami claims she is okay and gets up to leave, but he suddenly hugs her. He then reminds her that she can't hide her true feelings from him anymore, so she breaks down and releases all the pain she has been holding in. While crying, she finally admits that losing the game made all her hard work feel pointless. Days later, while in the shower, Minami recalls the way Arata showed up for her through everything and realizes that this is why Kotono is so obsessed with him. Around the same time, Aka is currently fuming because she thinks the judges were unfair to Minami. After telling Banri and Seiha that Minami was the real winner, Aka asks Arata for his thoughts on the game. He then tells her to stop making this an issue, so Minami can move past it without any regrets. Just then, Minami shows up, so Oka asks if she feels cheated, but Minami claims she is over the entire thing. After thanking them all for showing up the way they did, she sits, but Aka keeps losing her mind. Minami then tries to avoid looking at Arata, but he suddenly asks if she remembered to use warm water since she is still recovering. Minami immediately gets flustered and almost passes out from the rush of emotions, but she controls herself enough to respond to him. Meanwhile, Aka is still trying to get her point across by acting out what happened in the game. However, the dog sees this as her trying to play, so he joins the performance until she gets frustrated and throws the ball away. The ball almost knocks Minami out, but Arata saves her and starts yelling at Oka. This makes Minami think back to the other day, and after she also recalls Kotono's confession, her heart skips a beat. She then realizes that she might have feelings for Arata as well. Later on, Oka goes up to Kotono's room, and she gets surprised because everyone has been avoiding her since the confession. Around the same time, Minami tells the dog about her feelings since he can't snitch on her. However, Arata shows up and asks what she is up to, which makes her panic. While Minami runs off to avoid staring into his eyes, Oka takes a tour of Kotono's room until she gets tired of the suspense and asks what she really wants. After saying that it's about the confession, Aka asks if she is really in love with Arata, but Kotono tells tells Aka to drop the act and admit that she also has feelings for him. Aka gets surprised to hear this, so Katano tells her about the text Minami sent to the group a while ago. She also brings up what happened in the game room as proof that she wants Arata. However, Aka explains what really happened that night at the park. She then reminds Kotono that she didn't do anything with Arata in the room, which shows that she obviously doesn't want to ride his beef stick. This makes Kotono excited, so she apologizes to Oka for misunderstanding her relationship with Arata. A couple of nights after this, Banri asks Oka and Seiha to follow her to college to get something, but they refuse and tell her to find someone else. Moments later, she is still pacing around, thinking of a solution, when she spots Arata. She immediately begs him and, as expected, he agrees, so she takes him to college with her. After they sneak in, Banri explains that security never lets anyone in past sundown, but she left a super important document inside, which is why she needed someone to help her get it back. As they head inside, Banri also admits that she was too scared to come alone. So Arata asks why she decided to study medicine, because she will obviously see some traumatizing stuff while working. Banri then claims that she can handle anything aside from ghosts. Moments later, Banri grabs him even tighter, but Arata starts feeling her melons, so he asks for some space. Unfortunately, Banri is already past her breaking point, so letting go is not an option, leaving Arata with no choice but to resist his urges. As they continue walking, Banri suddenly asks him for a story so she can stay distracted, but Arata pulls her into a corner and holds her close. Banri panics and tries to pull herself away, but he stops her because there is a guard walking by. The next moment, Arata recalls that she is a student here, so getting caught won't really cause any problems. However, it's already too late because his arms have been wrapped around her juicy jugs. After quickly pulling away, he apologizes, but the thought of her massive rack still floods his mind. Banri then reminds him that they still need to get the document she needs, so they keep moving. Minutes later, Banri takes him into a club room and grabs a stuffed animal, which makes Arata realize that she made them sneak into school for no reason. She also lied about the documents, so he asks if she is really serious about her career, but Banri says yes and decides to talk about the day her group got sent out to a local hospital for a test. Once there, she noticed another group of students playing with sick patients, so she got curious and asked about them. It turns out they were a volunteer group from her college as well, so she decided to join them. Not long after, she became a regular at the hospital and always made toys for the little ones. She goes on to tell Arata about the time she would visit their mum in the hospital and how bad it felt. It was during that time that she met a nurse who helped her discover her passion for helping people through healthcare. As they head out, Arata asks Banri why she didn't just tell him all that at first, so she apologizes for lying. However, she says he can't complain since he got to really feel up her milkers. Upon seeing his face, she tries to apologize for teasing, but Arata starts heading out so she won't see how flustered he truly is. The next week, at school, everyone in Oka's class gets their test results, and as usual, the fans rush to ask Oka what she got. She then says it was her usual perfect score, so they congratulate her and leave. In reality, Aka is panicking because this is the first time she is getting a D. Days later, it's Saturday, so Arata is surprised to see Aka all dressed in the morning with a packed bag. When he asks what is going on, she casually says she is leaving town. Arata then thinks she is just going on the usual 3-day holiday to relax a bit. However, by next Tuesday, he starts getting worried because no one has heard from Aka or knows when she is coming back. Shion and the rest of the girls return to school and act like nothing happened to avoid any growing suspicion. Meanwhile, Arata gets bombarded with questions as Oka's friends get worried because she has never skipped school this long without a solid reason. Later that evening, Aka takes a bath and gets ready to go back home, but a sudden mood swing makes her change her mind, so she decides to stay longer. Around the same time, everyone else at home starts panicking because she has never done this before. Just then, Banri recalls that she installed a tracker in their phone in case anyone ever got lost. She then checks for Oka's location and gets terrified to see that she is at Mount Fuji. The others also get scared because people only go that far to unalive themselves. Shion tries to lighten up the mood by saying she could have just used a fan in the room, but they all agree that Oka needs to come back because staying away for longer will affect the reputation she worked so hard for at school. Minutes later, Arata packs some supplies and decides to go get her back. However, they all get concerned because it will probably be very late when he finally reaches Mount Fuji. Arata agrees that it's not the safest move, but since someone has to bring Oka back, he decides to do it regardless. He then rushes to find the last bus heading to Mount Fuji for the day. Hours later, Arata is climbing up a trail on the mountain when he realizes that Oka probably used the exact same route. This makes him a lot more concerned, so he keeps climbing. Meanwhile, Minami is still tracking his phone, but she heads into the kitchen for water. That's when Kotono admits that she is worried about Arata. Minami then assures Kotono that he will be fine and reminds her that Arata trains like a beast every day. Not long after this, Arata makes it to the main mountain hotel, and Aka gets shocked to see him because he had to have walked all the way here from the station. After acting like it was nothing, Arata asks for a bed and texts everyone back home so they can stop worrying. Minutes later, he enters Oka's room and wonders why he didn't just get a separate room because he can't stop thinking about the night in the game room. Like that isn't enough, Aka suddenly decides to change, so he looks away and struggles to keep little Johnny under control. After Aka finally tucks herself in, Arata asks why why she suddenly dipped like that and refused to return. Aka doesn't respond, but after he says they have to head back tomorrow, she tells him about her decision to stay longer and still refuses to explain why. The moment he enters the bed, she tells him that their dad actually met their mom on this mountain. He also had to carry her all the way down because she couldn't handle the height. As Arata wonders where all this is coming from, Oka asks if he would ever accept the love of one of his sisters if she were his destined soulmate. This question surprises Arata, so he asks why she would suddenly say something like that. Oka then reminds him that Kotono confessed her feelings for him, and this makes him relax because it looked like she was about to confess as well. However, he still wants to know how all this is connected to her leaving home. Unfortunately, Oka has already fallen asleep, so Arata watches over her for a couple of minutes before covering her up. The next morning, Arata sees a note from Aka claiming that she has already gone home. However, he doesn't trust it, so he calls Banri to track her again. It turns out Oka is still on the mountain, so Arata sets out to find her. Much later, two climbers see Oka at the summit and get concerned because she has been coming to this same spot for the last few days. As a fog starts covering the area, they decide to head back inside and note that there is a dangerous second trail most climbers won't see in the fog. Aka barely hears all this and keeps staring down the summit for a couple of minutes before finally deciding to leave. Several minutes later, she panics because she seems to be on a completely different trail and the fog has covered up all the signs. Left with no other option, she decides to head back to the summit, but after accidentally slipping, she lands in a ditch by the mountainside. She then tries to get back up, but a painful bruise stops her. By then, Arata has just gotten to the summit, and after taking a look around, he heads back to the hotel, thinking she has already left. Once there, he learns that Oka never came back, so he calls Banri to track her again. However, Banri can't get Oka's signal because she went out of range when she slipped down the mountainside. Much later, in a dream, Aka recalls the day their dad gave her a special pair of earrings that belonged to their mother. After also talking about how they first met, he tells Oka that she might also be lucky enough to find her first love on the mountain summit. After waking up, Aka sees that her power bank is completely drained and her phone has no signal, which means she is completely trapped with no way of getting help. She then accepts that no one is coming. Even after thinking of Arata, she convinces herself that he already left because no one would go through all that trouble for someone who isn't even his real sister. Just then, she loses one of the earrings and immediately starts searching for it. Surprisingly, the light bouncing off it helps Arata find Oka, and although she gets excited to see him, she also thinks he might be her soulmate. Years ago, Oka got back from school with an exciting story about how her day went, so their dad asked for a couple of minutes to finish his work. After making some snacks for both of them, he sat with her for a few minutes and listened to every pointless event she yapped about. Then, just a few days before she left, he saw her at the door and reminded her that she could still come talk to him whenever she wanted, but she told him not to worry and ran off. Back to the present, Aka is still shocked to see Arata standing in front of her. She gets up to ask why, but her bruise stings, causing her to collapse again. Arata then walks over and calmly takes a look at it before offering to carry her back. She immediately refuses and tells him to just point out the trail, but Arata tells her to stop acting stubborn so they can leave. Left with no choice, she climbs his back and warns him not to comment on her weight. Arata then says she is very light, which is what their dad probably felt when he was carrying their mum down the mountain. As he starts walking back to the trail, Banri gets worried because she hasn't seen a signal from Arata's phone, and weather reports show that it's not a good time to be on the mountain trail. To make matters worse, none of them are responding to texts, so their dad cancels his flight to come back home. While Banri and Seiha discuss further, Minami is also very worried, so Shion tells her to relax because Arata is very reliable. Around the same time, Kotono is also praying for both of them and wondering why Oka suddenly did this. Minutes later, Arata finally spots the correct trail, but he almost falls because of Oka's insane weight. This makes her feel bad, so she tells Arata that she decided to come all the way out here because of a video where people claim that they saw their deceased relatives at the summit. She wanted to talk to their mum and ask a couple of questions, but when Arata asks how that turned out, she gets emotional and says there is no way their mum would have shown up since she is not even her real daughter. She goes on to explain that learning the truth about their family made it impossible for her to connect with their dad as she did in the past. It all feels fake now, like she never deserved to have those conversations with him. The fact that she also can't tell anyone in school about it made it impossible for her to cope, and it started affecting her studies. As she gets emotional and says she hates not being able to connect with anyone as she did in the past, Arata calmly listens and lets her pound his back in anger. However, when she keeps complaining about feeling lost and hating life, his patience starts wearing out. Then, Oka asks why he really came all this way just to find her, despite knowing that they are not even related. After taking a moment to gather his words, Arata reminds Oka of the time they promised to always look out for each other. She gets surprised that he still remembers that, so Arata says he will keep the promise even if they are not real siblings. Minutes later, they finally get back to the hotel and quickly pack their things before taking a bus to the station closest to home. Once there, Minami starts yapping about not needing his help again, but this time, Arata refuses to let it slide. However, before he can say anything, they see Banri and the others, who have been worried sick this entire time. Banri quickly checks both of them to make sure nobody got hurt, and after seeing that they are both okay, everyone heads to the car. Several minutes later, Banri is still driving when Arata suddenly falls asleep on Oka's shoulder. This makes her think back to the time she was running her mouth as usual to teach him how to be a gentleman. By the time they finally get back home, everyone hops out of the car to get some much needed rest, but Oka calls them all back because Arata is not waking up and he has a seriously high fever. As they all panic, Shion hurriedly carries Arata up to the room so they can keep a close eye on him. Their dad finally shows up as well, but instead of checking on Arata, he's more worried about his runaway daughter. After Oka assures him that she is perfectly fine, he tells everyone else to get some rest because Arata will be okay. Much later, he's back in his office looking at a bunch of old pictures when Oka shows up to talk. It has been ages since she showed up like this, so their dad drops the album and asks if she needs help with anything. Oka then tells him all about her quest for self-discovery on the mountain before promising to start making time to talk to him like they did in the past. This makes their dad a little emotional, so they hug each other. The next day, at school, Aka returns, but she doesn't get the expected reaction from everyone because they are now wondering why Arata didn't show up to school. Manami starts making up random excuses and topics to avoid talking about it, but she mostly feels bad because he wouldn't have fallen sick if she had just stayed home and dealt with her problems like a regular person. That night, at home, Banri prepares a special porridge for Arata, but both Manami and Kotono want to feed it to him. Banri then decides to give it to Manami and reminds her that they have to do everything to keep Kotono from being too close to him. Several minutes later, Aka hops out of the shower and tells everyone else that they can use it. After getting ready for bed, she heads up to Arata's room and apologizes for putting him in this condition with her selfishness. She also admits that the main reason she left home is that she can't seem to get rid of her feelings for him. As she continues confessing her feelings and explaining how confusing they are, Banri continues talking with everyone else, thinking Arata is sleeping safely in his room. The next moment, Oka leans in and takes her sweet time kissing Arata before telling him goodnight and leaving. However, the moment she leaves the room, Arata opens his eyes and struggles to believe that Oka just did that to him. A couple of days after this, Banri takes the family on a road trip to an old villa their dad bought as a vacation house. Once there, they all rush inside to see if it's the same as they remember. Minutes later, Arata is on the balcony, recalling that he would sleep on the floor at certain times back then. All of a sudden, he feels something soft and fluffy as Banri grabs his arm and says that a lot has changed since then. He immediately recoils and tells Banri to stop messing with his sanity, so she decides to give him a break from all the teasing. However, after she leaves, Arata spots Oka chatting with Kotano and wonders what is going through her head. It almost seems like the kiss was a bad dream because Oka has been acting like she always does and is obviously doing a good job of appearing innocent. Arata, on the other hand, has not been able to think of anything aside from the ungodly long kiss. As he keeps wondering what will happen between them, Oka notices the concerned look on his face, so she walks up and asks if everything is okay. Being so close to her makes Arata panic, so he runs off to avoid saying something he will regret. Before they got to the villa, Shion stopped at a certain station to handle some personal business. However, he got disappointed when he showed up at the location and learned that the people he came to see had already vacated. Back in the present, Arata has just hopped into the shower, hoping that the water will help him stop thinking of Oka in unholy ways. The next moment, Shion walks in and says he forgot to lock the door behind himself. He then tells Arata that he went to find his real birth parents to hopefully get some answers about his origins and how he ended up at an orphanage. After explaining how he found their place empty, he admits that it was a little painful even if he never knew them. He then asks Arata if he has ever been curious to know who his real parents are. In response, Arata says he has never felt the slightest bit of curiosity because he only thinks of their dad and their sisters as his family. He claims to have no interest in finding the people who ditched him, so Shion thanks him for lending a listening ear. After giving him a towel, Shion leaves while Arata takes a second to think about their conversation. Much later, they all gather around a grill to get dinner started. Just then, Oka starts talking to Shion like she normally would, but this makes Arata even more confused than before because she seems perfectly fine while he is still freaking out over what happened. On the other hand, Minami is just excited about a skirt she bought. The following day, Oka wakes up a little earlier than usual and sees that Arata has already left for his morning workout. However, instead of pushing his body to the limit like he always does, he decides to relax his muscles in the sauna. Arata also wants to use this to relax his nerves from all the constant thinking, but then he starts thinking about Oka and decides to wrap it up. The next moment, he walks out and sees Oka, who has been quietly watching this entire time. After remembering that she has no idea that he was awake during the kiss, Arata decides to act cool to avoid raising suspicion. However, his act starts falling apart when Oka challenges him to an endurance contest in the sauna. Arata initially tries to refuse, but after realizing that she will suspects something, he agrees to it. As expected, he quickly regrets this decision because he has never been this close to Oka since the other night. To make matters worse, her perfect drumsticks are right next to him, and little Johnny is desperate for a swim in her water fountain. The next moment, Aka asks if he has ever thought about getting a girlfriend, but Arata immediately says he is only interested in becoming the next top G. His plans to ascend better than clavicular are way too important for him to be thinking about girls. Moments later, Arata gets overwhelmed, so he hurries out of the sauna to catch his breath. Oka follows him, but instead of making sure he is okay, she asks if he is still interested in that chick he was crushing on. When he claims to be completely over it, she suddenly gets excited and runs inside to take a shower. This whole time, Aka managed to keep a straight face, but inside the bathroom, her true feelings are exposed. She wonders why she can't stop giving Arata subtle signs and worries that she might expose herself soon. However, after recalling that she has always had amazing chemistry with Arata, Oka realizes that her feelings for him started a long time ago, and they are not leaving anytime soon. As Aka keeps thinking of ways to get close to Arata, Minami cooks up a plan to get some alone time with him. For starters, she asks him to escort her to a certain flower garden. As soon as they get there, Arata takes a look at all the flowers and gets surprised because he never thought she liked girly stuff. He then thinks something else is going on, so he asks Minami if there is a special occasion. However, she insists that she just likes looking at flowers. The next shock hits when Arata notices her skirt, but he decides to stop overthinking everything because she might just be trying something new. That is, until a couple of minutes later, when he realizes that this garden is a romantic spot for couples. As he tries to figure out what Minami has planned, she suddenly asks about the type of person he wants to marry in the future. Shocked, Arata asks why she wants to know all of a sudden, so Minami explains that seeing all the couples here just made her a bit curious. Arata then says his wife has to be someone he feels comfortable with and someone who understands the type of guy he is, because he will be spending a lot of time at work, unlike you simps. While still wondering why she really asked this, Arata spots the tag on her skirt, so he tells her about it. He also offers to remove it, but Minami tells him not to worry and spends a couple of minutes struggling to take it off by herself. Eventually, she gives up, so Arata takes over, but the tag is too strong, so he decides to bite it off, which makes Minami wish the earth could swallow her up. Minutes later, she is back in high spirits, taking those cringy influencer pictures that everybody hates. All of a sudden, she tells Arata that she recently fell in love, so he carefully thinks about everything that happened so far, and thinks she has just been using him to practice for the guy she fell in love with. This makes him feel a lot better, so he promises to help with anything she needs. Minami then heads into a merch store to shop, and after joining her, Arata realizes that she also wants to get something for him. He tries to stop her, but Minami insists and says it's the only way to repay all this kindness. Weeks later, Banri takes the fam on another road trip, but this time, it's to a waterfall they love visiting while growing up. Naturally, they all get excited, so the girls run off to get changed. As they start setting up the spot, some locals lock eyes with the girls and struggle to take their eyes off because they have never seen such beauties before. While they keep staring, Arata decides to take a dip with Shion, who then tells him that a bunch of nerds from school were begging for a chance to hang out with the girls. They were even offering to pay, which seemed enticing until Shion realized that they were basically turning him into a simp. Arata then tells him that the girls are not that attractive for them to be doing all that, but Shion asks if he has an eye disease because they obviously look like goddesses in those swimsuits. After taking one look at them, Arata's glizzy agrees with Shion. Minutes later, Oka gets tired of waiting for them to spice things up, so she dives into the water. When Seda calls her a dummy for engaging in barbaric behavior, Shion reminds her that they used to be the first to dive years ago. As Seda struggles to accept this, Oka asks Arata if he wants to dive in as well, but one look at her face scrambles his last remaining brain cells. He then avoids talking to her, so she asks Minami to dive since he clearly doesn't have balls anymore. Minami agrees, but on the condition that Arata has to jump with her. He also agrees to this, still failing to realize that Minami is down bad for his special cream. After they both jump, everyone gets into the water to have a good time. While doing so, Arata flashes back to what days like these looked like before their dad decided to drop a bomb of a revelation on them. Next moment, his nostalgic moment gets interrupted by Seiha, who has apparently lost her plot armor in the water. Arata panics, thinking her assets are about to get exposed, but then he sees that she has a shirt on, so he asks why she can't just use that. Seiha then explains that her shirt is actually useless for protecting her precious melons. She only brought it as an extra layer, and Arata quickly realizes what that means as she starts moving. After seeing her melon wraps, she tries to grab it, but Arata stops her because he has already seen enough. As soon as he gets it back, he tries to think holy thoughts and looks away, but he still gets an eye full of plots and ends up with a loaded blaster in his shorts. A couple of minutes after this, Banri teaches Oka and Minami how to steam rice. She then asks Arata to go swimming with her, and says she was too busy setting up to join them earlier. Like always, Arata plays hard to get but eventually follows her to the water like a good boy. This entire time, the locals are still feasting their eyes and wondering how they can get with someone this hot. Eventually, Banri gets tired of swimming and asks to be carried out, but Arata is tired of listening to her every command. However, after she hops on his back with her melons, he folds and starts carrying her out. Along the way, Banri asks if he wants to talk about everything, and after recalling what Oka did, Arata still decides to keep quiet about it. Banri also decides to keep Kotono's confession secret since he still has no idea that it happened. When they get close to the waterfall, Banri tells Arata to go closer, but he stops and asks if she has genuinely lost it. He then refuses to take another step, so Banri tries to use her melons again, but Arata slips. Luckily, they manage to escape the strong tides. All of a sudden, Banri asks Arata what he would do if she admitted to loving him. However, after seeing that he didn't hear a word, she tells him not to worry and continues playing with the water. Meanwhile, Kotono heard every word, as usual. Much later, Kotono meets Arata at the van and asks if he can follow her to get a snack from the vending machine. Arata agrees, thinking it will be a harmless walk, but just a couple of minutes later, he realizes that they haven't had a chance to talk since the bathroom incident. This creates an awkward tension between them, so he tells Kotono to be careful around the water so she doesn't get swept up like last time. She then reminds him that it was a long time ago and she has grown since then. One quick look at her cannons makes Arata realize that she is right, but he keeps it to himself until they get to the vending machine. After another quick glance, he notices that Kotono has something on her chest, so he reminds her that she can tell him anything. This makes her emotional, so she admits that she feels guilty for Aka's sudden decision to run away. Arata immediately stops her from blaming herself and assures her that they all still love her regardless of how she feels. Seeing the look on Arata's face makes Kotono remember that he was the first in the family to make her feel seen. Back then, it was one of these swimming trips, but she went too far out in the water and started drowning. While everyone else was oblivious, Arata jumped in without thinking and managed to save her. She immediately apologized for putting him in danger, but he stopped her and said it was his responsibility to get her out of any trouble. Minutes later, they return to camp, and Banri suggests packing it up so they can rest and prepare for a ceremony. Hours later, they all get dressed and excited to see candles everywhere. As the girls take in the beauty of the ceremony, Arata tells himself that nothing has changed about their relationship, despite all the recent confessions and kisses. His delusion almost becomes reality, but while taking a walk moments later, he spots Kotono talking to Oka and Minami. His curiosity takes over, so he finds a spot to hide and listens as Kotono apologizes for the way she suddenly confessed her feelings for him and made them all worried. Arata gets relieved by this and thinks she is really coming to her senses, but then Kotono takes things a step further. She tells them that she hates being treated as if her opinions and decisions are immature and untrue. She also assures them that she is serious about loving Arata and is still committed to being with him. While Arata tries to process this, Minami also admits that she loves him, which surprises Oka. She then asks Minami if this is some sort of joke, but Minami says she is tired of hiding her true feelings. Kotono is also surprised to hear this, but Minami doubles down and says they have to fight fair and square for Arata's love. The next moment, Oka confesses as well and decides to join the fight. However, they all promise to keep loving and supporting each other regardless of who he picks. While the obsessed lovers prepare for battle, Arata panics as he never expected all three of them to want his glizzy so badly. Will Arata take this opportunity to start a step-sibling harem with the girls? Comment next part to find out, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to go into more videos like this.